Well,
thank you for coming. Hi, how are you? How many of you are here for the first time for the ProductTank thing? Okay. You've never been?
Not for ProductTank.
Okay. So what ProductTank is about is a global organization now. It started in London and San Francisco. It's closely related to something called Mind the Product, which is the biggest conference for product managers. It happens in San Francisco and in London. I think for the past 10 years that's been the biggest conference. There might be one or two more, but they're not very significant. So there aren't too many gatherings among product managers generally, and I think that the main reason why is because these people are generally overworked and they don't have the time to sit around and talk. And I think it's very important to gather occasionally and talk, because that's the only way we can truly share ideas, knowledge, learn from each other, build teams, network, and all these other good things that, for example, salespeople know so well how to do, and we need to do more of that. So I've been running this for the past 2 years here in Slovenia. We have different type of attendance, depending on what sort of topic we picked, where we gather, things like that. We haven't done it in a little bit of time, and I was just discussing that I feel like everybody's so busy lately, and I'm like, what's going on in Ljubljana and Slovenia in general? I feel like maybe people are overworked again, like have so much stuff going on. Economy is definitely booming. I don't know, what's the unemployment rate? Anyone knows these days?
10, 9.
Is it? Well, that's pretty high.
Well, you have unemployable.
And then they're unemployable. Hi, welcome. Are you here for the first time on ProductTank thing? Second, okay. First. I'm not going to repeat what I just said, which is why we're here. But anyway, this is generally aimed at product managers. There's lots of confusion. What does that really mean? And that's the main reason why I wanted to do this when I moved to Ljubljana 2 years ago, to raise more awareness around what this type of job is about, because there's a lot of project management going on. And then once you get into product management, depending on what stage of growth you're in your particular company, if you're early startup or, you know, a couple of years into it, or if you have a line of products, you become more specialized. So we generally start with being generalists, doing something, and then as the company grows, as the demand is bigger, then you start having, I don't know, technical product manager and growth hacker and this guy and that guy, and they're all sort of part of the, slightly doing different things but with the same goal in mind, if that makes sense. So how many of you are, just for my understanding, product managers of some sort somewhere doing something as a product manager? Good. How many of you are project managers? That's how you see yourself. Which is your main concern is budget, resourcing, and that's that. Budget, resourcing, making sure that everything is delivered in time. How many of you are designers maybe? Okay, a couple of designers, great. Tech, what do you do?
R&D.
R&D, okay. Like, who didn't raise a hand? Okay. So just wanted to get the feel of who you are. So we haven't done much in the past few months, but I wanted to gather people and I wanted to address this particular topic because I feel like I've been asked this question a lot. Everywhere I go, clients I work with. So, oh, by the way, we're here at D.Labs. There's a bathroom right around the corner here. So if you go down to the first right, you'll see bathroom in case you need to. And this agency in particular works with startup founders in UK for the most part. We do have some Germany and Switzerland clients. And what we do is we build digital products, so that's pretty much where our focus is. So because of that type of specialization and how we work, I will share some tools that I've been working with for the most part, and the questions that I'm getting is a lot from our clients, also with people that I network with in the space of product management. And it's always an interesting conversation, because I often find myself saying, well, I use Google Spreadsheets and I use, you know, Google Docs, but things go beyond that, of course, and that's why I feel like that there's a good need to have that kind of conversation. So what I'll do is I'll give you a short presentation. My goal is only to spark a conversation. So my presentation is not going to be longer than 15 minutes, then I'm done. And it's going to be totally waste of your time that you came here to hear a 15-minute presentation. Therefore, unless you engage and unless we start sharing, this is not going to be a good session. Everyone understood that? Cool. Oh, any questions so far?
Not yet.
Not yet? Good. So agenda. Number one, why do we need tools? Sometimes there's that basic stuff like, what kind of tools are we talking about? Can tools help with framework? I want to address that a little bit. Strategy and roadmap, which is what I mostly deal with in my professional life, and tools for strategy and roadmap. But we can certainly open this up for wider than that. And then some tools recommendations from my experience and what I've been working with, but then I would also love to hear from you guys. That's the agenda for my 15-minute talk. So why tools? This is also big thing that I often, so just to give you an example, I start working with a client in London, and that client would come here, or we would get on Skype and they would say, we have some money, we validated this idea, we want to build this tool for doctors so that doctors can do, for example, instead of every patient-doctor interaction needs to happen face-to-face, we want to do some telemedicine so that we can potentially call each other, do some sort of quick consultation. Maybe a patient can send a picture, here is my skin problem, what do you recommend? So that we can start doing these things more remotely. And I say, great, do you have something, some documentation around this, right? Do you have some presentation, do you have some picture or more analysis around this? Nope, I've got nothing. Can your team of developers build this? And clearly, what would be the answer? No. That's why we need tools to help us do better communication, because what we just spoke about, yeah, we got it, and then what, right? There's a lot of specifications, a lot of details when it comes to communicating with developers, when it comes to communicating with designer, what designer needs to do. All sorts of visual, like more we can create pictures and visualize things for whomever is engaged on this team now to do something. That makes it much better process, right? So if we leave things to verbal, it's a disaster. Writing some documents and some descriptions in text helps. Is it enough? Probably not, right? So we often need images, graphs, wireframes, things around, all sorts of things to help communication, to help someone organize. And then I would ask this client, well, what's the main priority? Where do we start? Everything's priority, right? So what kind of tools can you use to help you organize your thoughts, your thinking, your analytics in order to get better at understanding how do we build this, what do we start with, etc. So in presentations, in prioritization, in organization, in communication, we need tools. We can't just leave it without it. Often when you're building something, and again, I'd like to talk again from my experience in terms of startup founders starting something brand new, you need to first come up with the framework. How do we tackle this? Someone just told you this is what I want to build. Where do you start with this? So first you need to, this is generally the framework I work with. I ask myself, let's define some high-level goals, strategy. Let's define personas, we call them personas, but really it's the people that would be using this particular tool. So that would be, in this particular case, doctors and then patients. Would it be doctor's assistant maybe, for, in some cases? If yes, how? Where do they need to understand this tool? Any nurse, anyone that would interact with this particular tool is our persona, and we need to define them. We need to understand what it is that they do today. They call, they come to face. We need to understand their interaction, different tools they engage with, whether that be phone or they send an email or whatever they do, in order to understand how we can digitize this, make it remote, and do it differently. Then we need to understand high-level business opportunity. What does that mean? Like, you have to be able to make money out of this at the end of the day. If not, why are we doing this, right? And that's where all of this business opportunity, we might think we're giving you a great product, right? For example, there's 10 million different bicycles out there. Why does someone want to go and build another bicycle? Who's going to pay for that bicycle? And then they go, and this bicycle is 3,000 euros. And you go, oh, really? And somehow there's a niche market of people that would buy a 3,000 euro bicycle because it does this, there's a unique value that that particular bike is presenting to you. But we need to understand, what is that money, how much money they would pay, what is the business opportunity there, and how much investment do we need to put into it in order to get that back, right? So we need to understand those things. We need to validate this in the sense of, we made lots of assumptions. Who are the personas, how much money they would pay, all these things, and then we need to go out and make sure that people would actually pay that money and validate this.
I have a question. Do you usually define this in the same order, like?
In this particular order?
Yeah. Because I think business opportunity should
It's
be
almost
first.
like, in order to, this is all pre-development. Before we go and build a bicycle, before we go and build this digital product, we need to define all of this, right? So can you do them in parallel? Yes, generally you do things in parallel. You don't have to do it in this particular order, but it's almost like, yeah, all of this needs to happen before you do anything else, right? And generally, let's see, these things shouldn't take that long. You can do this depending on the complexity of what you're trying to build. If it's something less complex, you can figure this out in 2 weeks, a month, right? To get you started. We're talking lightweight, simple project, just to kind of give you an idea, right? So you need some kind of framework, and then once you figure out what the framework is, how you're working through that, you can come up with some strategy. That's very important to do. And I often get the question, what is strategy? And there's actually a great blog. It's very simple. It's called What the Fuck is Strategy? So I kind of stole a couple of images from there because it was such a perfect way to explain this. But once you define your mission and your vision, so what is your end goal? You want to introduce a different way of visiting doctor. You want to save a lot of time for lots of people that it's inconvenient to, especially when it comes to preventive medical care. To do that in a much easier way. So that's your mission and your vision, right? Vision is like 3 years from now, I'm only going to go see a doctor when I have cancer and I'm dying, right? That's your vision. So you want to look far in advance and start thinking like what the world would look like if we do a lot of these things differently, right? Mission is, you know, what am I going to do for this year? And then you have somehow, you know, defined your strategy, but in order to execute on that, you need to come up with the roadmap, right? So that you can start your execution. I can say this, it's almost like, you know, we all have lots of different wishes. My wish is in 5 years I want to ride a motorcycle around Europe, but I still don't have a license, right? So in order for me to get to my, to reach that goal, I need to now come up with the roadmap, how I'm gonna do this. What's my step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to work through it. So that's exactly that. So your strategy is, I want to travel somewhere in the world, then you first need to figure out where. Well, let's say I want to do the coast to coast of America ride. I've done this in my life. I had a vision to change my career and live in California where there's more of startup, but I somehow wanted to be in San Diego because I thought that would be a better lifestyle than to be in San Francisco. And then I figured, oh, since I'm going there, I might as well enjoy the road trip, and then you have to figure out where and how. That was my MVP, just getting there, right? Minimum viable. Minimum that needs to happen as a first step is just to get there and enjoy the ride. But then from there on, what? Right? Then I need to meet some people, then I need to do a whole bunch of other things. So you come up with the steps. So this is your vision, mission, strategy, and then it starts turning more into, this is getting closer to the roadmap, but I still didn't make decisions around what the roadmap is, right? So there, I'm throwing lots of different examples, but, so, and then we need tools to do this. Tools to communicate this thing. If I'm gonna go with somebody on this road trip, this person needs to be informed. If I'm going to book some hotels, I need something to organize my itinerary, right? If I need to talk to some people along the way or make some networks or whatever, I need to capture that information somewhere. And how do you do this? What kind of tools you choose to do this? This is the type of question I get most of the time. Because what happens is when you start with the lightweight projects, yes, you can get away with just email. All of your information is in email or Slack. And then it becomes a nightmare to search through your email to see who said what where. And then you move on to some more sophisticated tools. And that's what I want to talk about. Great thing about some tools. So earlier I said framework, and now I'm giving you the same bullet points and I'm saying a guide. What often happens with tools, and the reason why we look for more sophisticated tools, is because the tools can sometimes dictate the framework. Tools can sometimes give you the template and give you the guide around how you're going to develop something. Does that make sense? So if I start with, for example, so that's why there are lightweight tools and there are pro tools when it comes to building a strategy for your product, for example. And those are some tools that I'd like to recommend. So for example, in order for me to come up with persona for this particular product, I can easily just use Google Doc. I don't need anything else. I can insert a picture there. I can write a bunch of text. This persona is a doctor that wants to work in a hospital, but also wants to do some remote work from home. Therefore, having an ability to talk from home to a patient about something, giving that kind of software, we would enable that doctor to function well, right? So we need to describe that persona. What's the benefit? What's the value? And for that, I can just do it in a Google Doc. I don't need anything sophisticated. Can I do Confluence? Sure, with any kind of wiki tool. It's even better, so much better than Google Docs, because wiki gives you a lot of hyper ways to connect, to navigate through a bunch of different documents, for example. Then there is a tool, for example, called Extensio that gives you what I was just saying earlier, kind of that template, and gives you, you know, it's almost like when you go here, it gives you lots of empty fields that you just need to fill out, and you go, oh, when I'm developing persona, this is what I should do, right? When you just had a blank Google sheet, you had to come up with all these things that persona should have, and unless you had lots of years of experience, you kind of, you know, but this gives you a lot of guidance around it, and then you go, oh, okay, now I know how I can fill this out. Anyone ever heard of this particular tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then you can go through and create your personas.
Does
Now
it
to
help
go-
you with content?
To help you organize your content, understand what you need to do
So the
for that
structure of
particular
what should be.
exercise.
Is this exclusively for personas?
This is just for personas, right? So I can use my Google spreadsheets to write up a bunch of ideas, for example, to write use cases. So for example, the next step would be for me, now I define these personas, that now I'm gonna come up with a bunch of use cases. How is this particular patient going to use this tool, right?
Could you just clarify? So personas, they're in other words like stakeholders. Something
Personas is really understanding who are the people you're building this product for and what kind of problem you're solving for them, right? And you need to, we often run on lots of assumptions. I'm going to assume lots of things about this person.
That people
right?
want to communicate with doctor electronically.
Exactly. So
Also vice versa.
exactly. So think about this. Everything often comes from a personal pain. My personal pain is I work a lot, I don't have time to see a doctor for preventive care. What does preventive care means? I feel like I'm coming down with something, but I'm not really sick. I don't have time to take off from work all day, get in line somewhere, do all this bunch of stuff. Imagine if I could just have this app, magic app, that gives me all the available doctors that want to talk to me, and then I can turn the video on and I say, look at my eye is really red, and you know, my ear is, whatever they can potentially do at distance, right? And I say, should I be worried? I'm not sleeping, I'm this and that, and then they tell you you're stressed, it's anxiety. You know, how many times did we see a doctor and all they tell you that you're stressed, and you're like, thanks a lot for nothing, right? But there is that, right? So, for example, I have that particular pain of not being able to go see doctor for preventive care, therefore I want to build this. And we have a lot of clients that really want to build stuff because it comes from a personal pain, something they personally experienced, they noticed among friends, or in their business. For example, I've been in this banking business for so long, the way we do these things is not efficient, it's affecting a lot of different things. I think the different solution would eliminate this pain. So they make this assumption, and now they want to start digging deeper. And in order to dig deeper, you first need to define this. Why? Because you're not going to alone do this job. And the moment you need to bring a team of people to work with you, you need to do what I said earlier. You need to communicate better, you need to visualize some things, you need to provide some way that your team can quickly get aligned with you and understand what needs to be done, right? And those are the reasons why you need to start doing things like developing personas, analyzing
the process
things.
is then testing assumptions about personas.
Exactly. So your next step would be you need to validate this, right? Once you have your use cases and your persona, what kind of tool would you use for use cases in a way to describe what happens today, where the pain points are, and how you're going to validate with these types of people that you describe here if this is really the problem, right? Then you need to validate. And to validate, it's a set of interview questions that you need to come up with, and to find these people, and you sit down and talk to them, and then you capture that. What kind of tool can you use to come up with questions to validate? You can use Google spreadsheet. Again, I keep going back to there's lots of lightweight. When I think about lightweight tools, I keep going back to these. A simple wiki, a spreadsheet, all of that would do the job, right? But then what happens is, I was just talking about startup stuff, early stage, not too complicated, right? But then you build this thing, this tool that's connecting doctors, and then you realize, oh, it's not just about calling them up for preventive care. It's also about booking appointments. Maybe we need another feature so we can book something. Maybe we need another set of tools that doctors can keep track of all the stuff that they're getting in from patients. Maybe we need something where a patient can now access this history, right? Maybe there is something, the diet plan that they propose for the future so that they don't even need that preventive stuff, right? So that's what generally happens in life. Once you build something and it's working, you start looking about growth, and that turns into more features. It starts turning into 3 products, and doing things in Google spreadsheets and stuff becomes a nightmare. So then you need to switch to something more sophisticated if you want to keep on top of it. If you don't, you can still continue doing this, but you'll find the people that are working for you, that 50% of time they're searching for some information and organizing, and 50% they're being productive in terms of coming up with good ideas and decisions around what makes this product good. Does that make sense? And those are the reasons why we're looking for tools, because we're always looking for ways to do things better, to help us manage this information that we're collecting over time in order to help us make better decisions, if that makes sense. So, for example, AHA is a tool for product managers, right? Would I recommend this for a startup person that's just starting out? No. This is actually an expensive tool. And you really don't need it until you get to the point where there's so much going on. But at the same time, once you are big enough, you have, if I just hover over to give you some ideas, here under strategy, it gives you, again, framework, how you're gathering information, how you're organizing, how you're prioritizing. It gives you templates around building your vision, building your business model. Then you map that to these personas. You have competitors that you're looking into. You're constantly trying to figure out how to be this, step ahead. There are goals that you can set up and initiatives that you set up, right? So you do all of that, and once you go through a bunch of analysis and lots of teams, bigger teams of conversations in which you get down to these initiatives, then you need to understand what is a true opportunity, and then you turn it into, now we're going to go and develop this one feature or these 3 features, because we've gone through all of this thinking about the market and where it makes sense and where is a true opportunity and what can potentially turn into a development. Because if you skip this step and you just go straight into development, what are you doing? Who knows the answer to that?
Playing around.
What you're doing is you're throwing a lot of money in the air.
Mm-hmm.
You're building something based on lots of assumption. that thing goes out, people are not using it or not the way you assumed and expected, and now you have to go back to the, to redo something, to do it differently, and you just spent a lot of money because development is expensive, right? This particular tool gives you a place to simply collect ideas. So once you have a product out, you start getting a lot of different ideas. Oh, this was so great, I would really use it for not just for medical care, but also for elderly care and situation like this and that. And then you kind of go, oh, I can expand there. And then someone goes, oh, this is great for German market, and in German market we got nothing like this. Oh, great, okay. So you start looking at all sorts of different ideas that are sort of, you're waiting to be cooked in a way. So you're collecting it, and what's great about this tool, it's kind of, there's everything is in one. You can move from your idea to strategy to, again, once it gets into something that's doable, then you can move it into features, and then you can do there's actually releases, you can, it's integrated with a bunch of different tools like Jira, if you use Jira for development, and then you can start getting some reports out of this too, right? So it's that kind of tool.
I have just a quick question. Normally, good ideas are usually about solving at least someone's problem.
All of the ideas should be about solving problems.
Or you're scratching your own itch, and it's someone else's itch as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you say would that go in this diagram or this part? Would that be a vision, or would that be a goal, or solving someone's problem? Is that a vision, or is that a goal, or is
Yeah, all of it is a solving a problem, really.
Okay.
So if you're coming up with the vision, there better be some concept of solving a problem in there. If there isn't, then what are you doing? Every time you're talking about something when it comes to product, so when we're building a product, whether that be a bicycle or some digital product or a juice, it should be solving some problem. All the juices on the market have too much sugar. Some people can't do too much sugar. To solve that problem for them, we need to provide a different kind of juice. Or what's the name of those sugars that are not real sugar, but
Like
diet
stevia.
drink, right?
Stevia or some
Right,
other.
or natural sugar, only fructose, and they're perishable. If you don't drink it in 24 hours, it's gonna go to shit, but at least we gave you this solution that you need to immediately buy and consume. So it's always solving. So the vision is to lower diabetes in the world. It's solving a problem. Mission is, so everything that you come up with should have a problem and solution in there. And if you don't have that, you should question people around you. What are we doing here? If you can't read that in whatever, in mission statement, in strategy, in idea should also include a solution to a problem, essentially, right? If you're dealing with growth, now we have this product. We assume that it's going to work for some people. Then we validate it. What does that mean? If we validate it, that means we maybe talked to 30 people, and people said, great, yes. And then you put something out, and then you get 100 people using this. Is this a good scale? Probably not, right? You're not going to not get rich. Let's not even talk about getting rich, but we're not even survive if you only have 100 users for something. How do you make this now be usable for thousands and millions of people? Well, you need to do some growth, and that's another solving a problem. You're solving a problem now for your own company of understanding how to do growth. How do you get, what sort of channels you use to put the word out, to get people to sign up, to get maybe salespeople, all sorts of different ways to solve a problem of growth, right? User acquisition. So that's a more sophisticated tool. Anyone has questions about any of these? ProdPad is similar. It also is, it has, you know, you get to do product roadmaps, strategies, but then there's a lot of focus on customer feedback. How do you collect that? How do you analyze that? Which would now loop into, you know, going back to the product backlog and the roadmap, building, etc. Right? So, anyone heard of AHA or ProdPad? Okay.
All these tools are outside the, what would you say, a regular Scrum everyday tools, right?
So Scrum is a framework, it's a methodology for developers, right? What does that mean? Once you go through all of this that I talked about today, and you came up with your initiative and your understanding of what you need to build, then you need to sort of push it over the fence to the developers to do, right? And now they go and say, okay, for us to be very efficient, we need to figure out a good methodology to work in. And Scrum proposes one of the most brilliant methods how, right? You need to have some planning around this, estimate some stories, you need to lock things down for a week or two, and then, you know, you deliver something and you need to push this out to the actual users. And if you can't figure out something that you can release in a week or two, you're not doing the right thing, kind of thing, right?
Do they integrate with any of the Scrum tools?
So
For
what
example, the
Scrum
product
does,
backlog?
so what Scrum is proposing, that kind of methodology. Come together as a team, plan, have a daily meeting, have a retrospective at the end, release something. And what they need is a tool to help them do that. And the tool that they generally use is some tracking tool. Tracking in terms of how do you break things down into little tasks, so one will develop this, and another one will do the style sheet, and another one will do that. So you have a bunch of tasks, and you need to track them to see what's in progress, what's about to release, so you can see what's stalling, what's being blocked, and then you can also measure velocity, how fast these people are working. You can do some reports to say this particular development team can deliver this amount of software in a month, and you can start understanding how fast or how well they're doing at this quality of product, right? So lots of people use Jira, some people use Trello, there is Asana, there's a bunch of other tools that support that kind of Scrum framework or Kanban framework, or some other Scrumban. There are lots of different out there. So this particular ProdPad, AHA, Craft.io, those are product management tools, which you use to cook up something that needs to be baked. To come up with ingredients is almost. Then they go and bake it using a different tool, right? So we need something for chopping vegetables, for mixing the whatever stuff, preparing things, and then they need to cook it up using a different tool in a way.
So basically in this one you can kind of like go to a level of user story, and then you just kind of like go and say push to development, and you integrate with Jira.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of like wondering, there's this Jira portfolio, and kind of I've never met anybody who would use that, but it seems it would be doing the same thing as this ProdPad in a limited version. So I was wondering if you maybe, or anybody has used that Jira portfolio.
No, what does
Kind
it
of
do?
it's the Jira road mapping tool. It's something they launched
Yeah.
last year. It seems pretty
Right.
heavy.
So that's I remember back in the day when we didn't have Atlassian.
Yeah.
So when Atlassian came out with a bunch of different things like Jira and stuff, it was awesome. It was so different. And then it got oversaturated with lots and lots of tools and stuff. What I did use is Confluence. Their Confluence was really good.
Yeah.
And especially at some point they introduced, back in my previous jobs, they introduced these templates, so it wasn't just a wiki page, but it does give you some guidance and says, you know, when you're putting down your mission, it would ask you a bunch of questions. What's the type of growth you want to see? Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself? You know, and you kind of start answering that, and that's how you map out a bunch of documentation that you need, and some thinking and analysis and stuff like that. But other than that, that's all I use. Jira. Did
Kind
you
of like-
use?
I had a question. As a product manager, do you integrate with tools developers use, or not? And they just copy the user stories for every sprint? Or
Generally, you want to look for something that's integrated, right? So ProductTank and AHA and Craft are all integrated with Jira.
okay. So do you use this at your daily work?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah,
okay.
that's definitely what we use. And you want to find something that's integrated. Otherwise, it's a lot of wasted talent. You know, someone super smart is sitting there and copying, pasting a bunch of stuff.
It's just kind of like what I realized out of these tools, that a lot of times when you talk to people who do mostly development, they kind of think that that Jira would do the roadmap, or this Scrum. I mean, you explained it very nicely, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes people will do that, will think that this Scrum will replace road mapping, and I don't know what. It's kind of like a very wrong way to think about it.
It is.
Like a product backlog can.
Yeah, it's also this ProductTank. If you ever have a chance, kind of you're interested, this Jana Besta, which is also this co-founder of this think tank, they designed it.
D.Labs built ProductTank.
Really awesome, awesome. So you know all about it. So
We help them grow their company,
Oh,
really. So
awesome.
we know all about it.
So basically, they have like this really cool webinar. I mean, she kind of like has it. Maybe you can share the link for everybody, where they explain this road mapping, the new way of doing a roadmap. And I think out of that, it's going to be more clear what these or similar tools do, and where they really help you in the process.
Yeah. Sometimes I mentor a lot of product managers, and I have in my past too. And when they ask me, so how do I go about this? Like learning how to be a product, and I would say stuff like sign up for that webinar. You know, once you start looking at what the tool is doing, you start learning about what you would need to do, essentially. Does that make sense? So it's like there are so many different uses of this webinar that you're talking about, and she does an amazing job. She's also available if you're serious about purchasing the tool to do one-on-one. And AHA does it too. They're based in San Francisco. They're a very serious company. They have an amazing blog, for example. So I often point people to the blog and say, read their blog, because there's lots of knowledge about what's trending, what are some pain points, how do you deal with this kind of challenge in your daily work, things like that, And if you're serious, they would always do a one-on-one. I mean, they would do just for you, sort of overview of the tool. So, what sort of tools do you guys use for your work?
Confluence.
Confluence? Yeah. Anybody else uses Confluence? Yeah. Why is that Why is that good for you? What does it do?
You can easily write and use user stories, attach some wireframes, mockups, and also it's easy to communicate, I think, with developers.
Yeah.
And all these things.
Because if your developers are using Jira, it's so easily integrated. As I said, it just gives a lot of templates around things, and then it becomes, and it's a wiki, so there's just much better organization and visualization of where your stuff is. So in that sense, it really helps. I was just recently in London working with some clients, and then I saw some of my friends that are product managers that work for bigger companies, and even sat with one at lunch, and I said, let me ask you, what kind of tools do you use at your company? Because they have a team, they have 5 different products, and they have a team of 7 product managers. And she looked at me and she said, Google spreadsheets and documents, and I said, what, at that size and all of this? And she said, yeah, because there aren't too many interdependencies, therefore we can still manage with very lightweight kind of tool. And I was shocked, but it, that's the kind of thing that happens. Lots of people are just still in Trello board and Confluence and stuff like that.
I really like this feature with ProductTank where basically you could, if you would set up the system well, you could pull in all the customer feedback and attach it to a user story or to a thing. So does this AHA does the same thing, or do they do this flow as
Yes,
well?
but I think that ProductTank does that better. AHA is better. So and then you get into this. How do I choose my tool? Right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly you have 3-4 to choose from, and yes, price is often the decider, but you also want to find the right thing. And some tools are better. Like I feel like AHA is better at this. Reporting and visibility and transparency in a bigger company, especially tying things to the strategy. So if you need to talk to your investors or like you can pull that kind of visualization much better. Where ProductTank has put more focus on users and how do you deal when you're like very much a user driven in your development. And therefore, this customer feedback loop is very well thought out and designed, so it becomes easier.
That's really awesome because it's all about that in the end.
Yeah.
And they kind of like tied up really nicely.
Yeah.
Although the prices went up a lot.
They did, yeah. I noticed that. I was sort of shocked a little bit because I forgot what it was like 6 months ago. I just feel like there's growth everywhere in the past.
I have never used this tool, so and I have a question. You told a few times about feedback from customers, but what about feedback from user experience designers, developers, for example, senior product managers? So what about teamwork inside of these tools?
Yeah. So both of them enable that, and that's why they're really, really great, right? So for example, again, one of the biggest challenges is to have a good communication across different team members, good alignment, so we're all aligned, this is what we're doing, this is where priority is, right? So both of these tools give access from different angles to come in and add their bits and pieces to see what's connected, how it works, and everything else. So generally, designers work with another set of tools, which is Sketch, and for example, either Adobe product, kind of that suite, or some other. Our designers here, they use Sketch, they use InVision, they use Zeppelin, stuff like that. So once they figure out their bits, they can load that into AHA or ProductTank, and everything becomes in one place. You can do some commenting around it in terms of working as a team collaboratively, and then in terms of alignment. Yeah. And then you can take that that's now ready to be cooked and add it to Jira, and you can give birth to spec right there, from like ideation all the way to here's the spec. What needs to be built. What other tools do you use?
We used to this workflow. I don't know if you mentioned that. The workflow, it's kind of like maybe of the simple tools, but I heard this kind of like Slack was actually built with that.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. What is it called? I don't.
Workflow. It's kind of like a string of lists that you can hyperlink between itself.
Is this it?
Yep.
There it is.
And initially, the Slack people actually they use that to build. To build the Slack.
Yeah.
Initially.
They don't give you the, what is it about?
Yeah,
They
it's
just
interesting. But they really
Just
have
They
sign
just
up.
tell you, they just tell you Twitter use this, Slack use this, Times use
See, yeah,
this.
exactly.
What the fuck are you waiting for? Sign up. And you're like, but what is
There
this
is a
about?
They're behind.
Yeah, they're already so famous, you know, they kind of like assume we would know.
Or try it out. Oh my god, and look how little that is. Great UX. Start using workflow already. Interesting, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like totally something else.
Right, good. I'll add it to my list before I share this presentation with all of you. What other tools are you familiar with, have used in the past? What are your pain points when it comes to doing your job in terms of communicating, organizing?
It's the
Priority is the worst.
basic tool that we maybe did not mention. It's the post-it notes.
Yes, post-it notes. It's a great tool. What's the problem with post-it notes?
It gets stale quickly.
They don't synchronize.
Yeah.
I'll tell you now, if I can just quickly find this, because this was my pain from yesterday, literally.
You have to learn
They're
how
not
to
sociable.
unpeel them from the bunch in order that they stick to the wall and not
Yeah, they
stick
start
away.
pulling off,
Yeah. It's a great tool to do what? What is great about post-it notes?
Collaborative thinking.
yeah. Yeah, face to face.
Yeah, face to face. Oh, now I'm afraid I'm gonna open something that's not for public. My life is that exciting. Probably, yeah, no, this is it. It's a jam from yesterday, right? So I'm working with this client and I said, did you develop any user journeys for this? And she said, yes, we did. And then she sends me this. And I'm like, what the hell do I do with this? This was great for them to generate ideas and user journeys. This is horrible to communicate with the bigger team. Right? This is horrible. And that's what we cannot do. It's great to generate ideas, and that's why, so I politely said, what would be really good if you can transcribe this into some electronic editable format so that we can continue to elaborate and build upon this, right? Hope she got the message, right? What other tools?
Whiteboard and felt pens are also amazing for discovery phase.
They are. So all of these, so I always say the best things out there, once you start over-engineering your tools, you're in big trouble. But you know, if you can, our designers still use a lot of paper and pencils, and that's the quickest and the fastest way to generate ideas, to get people talking, to ideate. All of that is great. The problem becomes when you start working with bigger teams, when now whatever you ideated on and whatever you feel like this is a good thing to mold over some more, you need to share with bigger teams. You need someone to take that idea now and do something else with it. That's when it becomes difficult with pencils and pens. And that's why we're now going into, okay, so we just write a Word document. And when you take this kind of, post notes, you can't put that in Word documents so it makes sense, maybe. Maybe spreadsheet can help, you have different columns, different groupings, you can filter on things, that type of stuff. But then you have, like, for example, ProdPad would give you like cards that you slide over and here and there and move things over.
We use Lucy charts for things like that.
Yeah.
In our company. So it's somewhere in between the whiteboard and some more advanced tools, but what you can do is basically you do a Lucy chart. So you start with post-its on Lucy charts, so you make notes there. When somebody starts drawing a flow out of that,
yeah,
and designers start attaching their designs onto the Lucy chart, so adding more to the flow itself, and then basic descriptions, like the product owner or the product manager starts putting descriptions there, and you can the best thing for us with Lucid Charts is you can change quickly. You're like, oh, this is the flow I would like. You start working on it, you figure out it doesn't work, so you just destroy the connections, you create new ones.
That's really, really cool. What is that called again?
Lucid Chart. Lucid Charts. It's
Lucid, as in lucid?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what was the original purpose for the tool, but
Diagrams done right. Awesome, that's good to know. So what I had in my presentation for that type of things is MindMeister. I don't know if anyone has heard of that one, but it's that kind of
mind mapping.
It's a mind mapping that is very flexible, la la la. But I was hoping someone would have
I'm interested maybe to add on this list if anybody can share what you guys are using for user journey documentation. Actually, I had this question before you brought this mess up. But
I also think that it might be, do you know about a real-time board?
real-time
It
board.
may be quite unknown tool, but it made up by some Russian company. Real-time board, you have endless like whiteboards, and you can zoom and put data as much as you want.
Cool.
So you have mix with mind map stickers also, but it's really useful if whole team is working there.
Yeah.
And also they have some integrations with Dropbox, Jira.
Should we look at pricing?
No, it's zero.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's you have 3
For
boards,
3
but you
members.
can put like whole work there.
Cool. Something to check out. Billboard.
And also it has desktop application, I think. So it helps quite a lot.
Well, look, you can do the UX research and design, innovation, lean agile management. So they kind of want to give you straight in there your sprints, so you don't need Jira. They're like, screw Jira, so sick of that. Strategy. Cool. Thank you for that. Anybody? Anything else? So for user journeys, yeah.
there are some tools I haven't really used them.
Yeah, I haven't used anything other than spreadsheets.
You
When it
can try
comes to
this
that.
one. I think you can build like some areas, like whatever you want. It's quite flexible.
What happens with us, because we work with these lightweight products, right? Our user journey mapping is such a short process that we quickly move into wireframing. So if anything, we end up jumping to Sketch. So we need to do some high-level information architecture almost to support this. We would just do it in Sketch because we have enough flexibility in that tool to map things out. But I'm sure there are tools out there. We can research that a little bit. Anybody else? Have you guys heard of any user journey? What are the guys using in Pomoja? The user journey.
Usually the plain documents, just document
Yeah.
nothing special, dedicated user journeys.
Yeah. And in AHA you can't really do nothing more than what you'd get in sort of a document.
Yeah, it's this.
Upload something.
It's
Or
this
upload,
that
yeah.
host is. It's this, but I never tried it. I think it's the UX Spin or something. That
Yeah,
they hosted the
UXPin
webinar. They
has
have the
lots of
tool.
different tools
Yeah,
actually.
but I never really used it, so I
Yeah.
was wondering if you know.
And actually Mark was saying that he wanted to try UXPin for Pomoja. He's been,
Yeah.
they have a bunch of tools, that's true.
Yeah.
Because it's a design platform
So
essentially.
basically, this is a part of competition to Envision in a certain part, but they would have this user story mapping, which maybe Envision doesn't really have.
Yeah, so they're building a suite so that you know, all the tools the designer would generally use would be in the UX bin. Cool. There's a lot of overlap in what product manager would do and what designer would do, essentially. So it depends on your organization.
Yeah, it's interesting because where I work now, it's people who are product managers and are developing the mobile apps. Actually, their background is user experience, and it's not really this more product management outgoing stuff. They would focus mostly on this.
Yeah. Well, every product manager's background is somewhere.
Yeah, some
Right.
some kind of
No
strengths.
one went to school for product management, that's for sure. Or was born like when I was little. Someone wanted to be a fireman and I wanted to be a product manager. You never. And what really disturbed me is when I was walking around the cemetery a year ago, and I love cemeteries. And I was in Oxford, and there was like, you know, a tombstone, and it says a poet, and this tombstone says like a writer, and I'm like, oh God, I hope I don't have the tombstone that says product manager. That would be, it just doesn't sound romantic at all. But we have generally backgrounds. My background is in design, either in technical, being a programmer first, or business, and then you kind of want to go solve these problems somehow at some point in your life, maybe because you were just so frustrated without anyone solving that problem for you and you had to do it as a designer or something. Anyway, with this, I would end my official part, but I hope we can still socialize and talk. If you have questions, we can linger here a little bit. There's some stuff there. Well, we should turn the light on so you see the stuff to munch on. And then there's also Dubop, which is a bar across the street. If someone wants to hang a little longer and have beer or whatever, that's that. But I'd like to thank you for coming. You should keep coming and share ideas. And I also invite you to stay a bit longer. Cool?
Thank you.
I'll also share this presentation with things on Meetup page, but I'll add the tools we brought up today before I share it.
That was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I just want to find somebody who did this conference. And I'm sorry, the Jira thing. Because I think they made the competition with Toolpath, but they are not that good.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like this portfolio.
It's only a year old, so
Yeah, probably.
good luck finding someone that used it.
Not here.
Especially if it's expensive, people hesitate to move on to something.
But maybe Contract or they're all on Jira or
Oh yeah.
what's the
You're
other
right.
the Ziltra people, maybe they have it because they're all Jira.
Sorry, we came a bit late. Could you just say what are you working on? Like I said, this is a map for some cancer detection or something like that. No.
Oh no! So
Yeah.
what? I was just giving an example. There are lots of. So this. Are you familiar with D.Labs?
Yeah, we're the first time here.
Okay.
I didn't know that something like that there like exists since the
Yeah. So we're an agency essentially, and we work with clients from Europe. So they would come and say, I have an idea, there's a big problem in this area, and I want to solve it with a digital product.